something just broke the sky twice and shook the ground twice. If you want the truth before the press release, hit subscribe right now. 2 stars erupted. 2 big earthquakes hit Venezuela back to back. And at the same time, a blast from the sun slammed into the strangest interstellar object we've ever tracked, 3I Atlas. Tonight, we connect the dots you're not supposed to connect, and we keep the line open until the last frame. Here's what happened first. An amateur astronomer in the southern hemisphere caught a sudden bright flare in Centaurus. Then another near Sagittarius. Not one nova, 2. The second one, V1935 Centauri, surged hard enough that gamma rays and hard X-rays flagged on the big instruments. Within hours, people could spot it with the naked eye from dark skies in the south. The other, V7994 Sagittari, hovered just under naked eye visibility, but long exposures pulled it out of the black. It wasn't just light, it was energy, raw and recent, running straight into the solar wind like a hand into a river. At almost the same time, the ground under Venezuela let go. A magnitude 6.2, then a 6.3 only a few hours later. Same zone. Shallow first, then deeper. The kind of pair that makes seismologists lean closer to the map, and then a 5.8 aftershock, close enough in size to make you wonder if the fault still had more to say. While all that was happening, the sun didn't sit still. Sunspot count around 165, solar flux climbing over 180. The star that feeds us turned the volume up just as we rode toward November, the month with the weirdest calendar for 3I Atlas. Closest approach to Mars on the 3rd at less than 2/10 of an astronomical unit. A superior conjunction with Earth on the 21st, the same day comet Swan comes a quarter of an AU to us. And then, late in the month, the big moment. Perihelion on the 29th, close, hot, loud. In the middle of that schedule, a coronal mass ejection took a slice out of the sun and swept across space like a moving wall. Models showed its path crossing the track of 3I Atlas. Not a gentle brush the way it would be in the outer void, a real impact with density and speed right as the object slid inside Mars's orbit. In July, when 3I Atlas was farther out, it took more than one hit from solar eruptions and still reacted. It brightened roughly 20 times over baseline, and its coma ballooned. Now it's closer, the solar wind tighter, the current stronger. The question isn't if it reacts, it's how much. You've seen the pictures by now. The weirdness isn't just the brightness, it's the tail. Big observatories show an anti-sunward tail, exactly what basic physics says you should see. Push dust away from the sun, and you get a long, faint stream behind the object. But a ton of amateur images, stacked and timed, show the opposite. A push in the sunward direction. A forward jet. A little puff of light that goes the wrong way. If this is all one thing, then either the light lies or our model does. And light rarely lies. Hold that thought while we zoom out a step. Back in July, right after discovery, 3I Atlas took repeated hits from solar gusts. The coma grew. Ionization went up. When you ionize gas around dust, the electrons don't just float free forever. They stick to dust grains. The recombination rate changes. And suddenly, you're not just talking dust and gas anymore. You're talking plasma. Most of the universe lives there. Charged stuff, fields, currents. If you build a coma out of that, a solar storm isn't just a breeze. It's a current switch. Now look what's on the board right this second. 2 nova blasts, 2 6+ quakes during a window of low solar wind density after a high-speed stream, which is the odd lull some researchers quietly watch for. A medium-strength CME crossing the path of the oddest interstellar visitor on the file, and a sun with a busy face, turning slowly toward a month stacked with geometry, Mars, Earth, the Sunday, 3I Atlas, and another comet sliding through the timing like a second hand. You want the simple explanation. Everyone does. The sky's loud, the ground is loud, the sun is loud, and our object is wired to the noise. But simple isn't honest yet. Here's what we can actually say without breaking the story or the science. When solar wind density drops after a high-speed stream, the magnetosphere breathes. When Earth breathes like that, stresses on faults can change. When a CME hits a charged coma, the coma changes shape and brightness. When sunspots rise, so does the chance that we get more eruptions. And when an interstellar object built like nothing we've seen runs that gauntlet, you pay attention. Not because it's magic, because it's math. So let's walk through the timeline we're living in. We'll keep it clean and we'll keep it human. Late September, the 2 novae flicker up from quiet to loud. One of them gets strong enough to trip gamma and hard X-ray monitors. That's not common. It means particles got fast and fields got busy. The light curve climbs. For a moment, a person in the right place, with dark eyes and a clear sky, can point and say, there. That star is new. Not new, just newly seen. October 25th, give or take 12 hours, a CME rose through the inner system. Models show it like a colored bubble expanding outward. Of course, it's messier, but there's enough to see a direction, enough to draw a line. That line crosses the track of 3I Atlas. Not out in the cold, where a bubble thins into fog, but inside Mars's orbit, where the wall still has weight. Same window. Venezuela shakes twice. 6.2, then 6.3. One shallow, then one deeper, like a zipper popping at the seam, and then the next tooth snapping loose. The waves ripple out across the networks in Mexico, the US, Canada, up to Alaska. People who don't watch seismographs still feel it in their bones the way you feel a bass line in another room. At the same time, the sun wears a crowded face, 165 sunspots on the disk, give or take 20 on the swing. Solar flux over 180. That's not record-breaking. It's simply a loud background for a month that was already going to be loud. Then there's the calendar waiting for us. On November 3rd, 3I Atlas misses Mars by less than 0.2 of an AU. On the 21st, it slides behind the Sun from Earth's view, the same day Swan comes about 1/4 AU from us. On the 29th, perihelion, fastest, hottest, most reactive. The points don't just make a path, they make a rhythm. Now, you could say this is all coincidence. 2 novae when we're already paying attention. 2 big quakes during a watch window. A CME hitting a comet like we've seen 1,000 times before. But do the work. Pull the light curve for 3I Atlas. It didn't sink back after the July surge. It held its gain. It sat high. It stayed weird. And that's before this latest joke. No, this isn't proof of a grand pattern. It's proof of a moment. A moment where space weather, ground weather, and deep time crossed the same page. Let's talk about the coma for a second in plain language. Around any active object that warms, material escapes, dust, gas. When that gas is in space, the sun charges it. You get ions and electrons. The electrons fly around, they stick to dust. Ions stick too. Charged dust behaves differently than neutral dust. It couples to magnetic field. It can stream along field lines that bend around the sun and planets. And when a CME arrives, the field lines don't just brush by. They grab, they drag, they rearrange. That's how you get a coma that looks like a bulb one day and a blade the next. That's how you get a tail that points the wrong way for a few frames and makes everyone argue online. Not because physics broke, because forces changed. If you've ever watched aurora's pulse after storm hits, you've seen the same story in color. Energy arrives. Fields rewire. Things glow in the places where currents close their loops. A comet coma is just a softer canvas for the same brush. So what happens now? First, Mars. The close pass on the 3rd means every instrument near the red planet becomes a gift. If the coma expands again under this new solar push, if jets switch direction when the next gust hits, if the light curve jumps, we'll see it. We'll get star camera flares. We'll get scattered reflections of dust. We might even get a side-on angle that finally settles the forward jet debate. The data bottleneck won't be the sky. It'll be the people. Second, the conjunction on the 21st. That's the hidden moment. Brightest and hottest by physics, but behind the sun from Earth. That's where we lean on geometry. Spacecraft at odd angles. Instruments that don't mind glare. And dumb luck. In past cases, that's where objects either blow off shells or go quiet. Some comets fragment when they round the furnace. Some harden and roll through. If 3I Atlas is as odd as it's looked so far, it could do neither. It could pulse. It could flicker. It could clean its surface and start behaving like a metal rock with a thin skin of light. Third, perihelion on the 29th. That's the drum hit you can feel in your chest even if you don't know the song. Speed up, heat up, throw out material or swallow your own dust and go dark. The sun will have a say. So will the direction of the last CME and the next one. If sunspots stay high, flares stay likely. If flares stay likely, the field stays restless. And a restless field is a mirror with moving hands. Now, about the earthquakes. We don't invent links to scare you. We do the common sense version. When a high-speed stream smacks Earth, the magnetosphere compresses. When the stream passes and density drops, it relaxes. That flex changes currents, and currents change stress. Most of the time, that's just background. Sometimes, a loaded fault takes the excuse. 2 quakes in Venezuela that close together are worth watching. The aftershock strength is worth watching. The depth pattern is worth watching. None of this is doom. It's just weather in slow motion. About the novae. Bursts of light and particles don't care about our calendar. They happened where they happened, when they happened. But if you're building a story of energy distribution across a system, they belong on the board with everything else. Light travels. Charged particles travel. Signals layer. We're sitting inside a moving ocean, and now and then 2 waves cross on the same rock. If you've made it this far, here's what you need to hold in your hands as the next nights roll over. The sky is louder than usual. The ground answered once and could answer again. The sun is leaning forward. 3i Atlas is about to write in the middle of the page, and we're going to read it together without blinking. There's one more layer most people skip because it feels soft. Pay attention to the rhythm. Not just dates, not just magnitudes, the rhythm, the way events bunch and breathe, the way a light curve refuses to fall, the way a tail points wrong while the models argue, the way 2 stars shout and 2 faults pop, and the sun throws a wall at a thing that shouldn't be here at all. Rhythm isn't proof. It's a map for where to look harder. So tonight, here's our open loop. The CME that crossed 3i Atlas is only the first card. If the coma swells again within the next few days, we'll know it took the hit. If the forward jet returns in amateur stacks while the pros still see anti-sunward, the plasma story wins another round. If Mars cameras catch a glint or a flash when the object slides past the third, the geometry mystery gets a new line. And if, during the conjunction window, the object brightens off angle where a solar probe can see it, we'll have the kind of data that changes the tone of a room. We also have swarm on the same day as conjunction. 2 objects, 2 different histories, crossing the same stage lights. If one of them acts normal and the other acts like a machine that forgot it was supposed to look like a rock, you'll feel the difference in your gut. Keep breathing. Keep watching. The weirdest part about a month like this isn't the noise. It's the silence between hits. That's where the messages hide. In a few minutes, we're going deeper into the science that explains the tail flip and the brightness jump in plain words you can repeat to anyone. Why electrons stick where they shouldn't. Why dust lines up along invisible rails. Why low-density wind feels like a vacuum that tugs on our planet like a sigh. And then we're going to pull the dates apart day by day so you know exactly when to step outside and look up and exactly when to expect the next glitch on a satellite that forgot the sky has moods. Stay to the end. The last scene includes a prediction window for a second brightness surge and a simple test you can do with a consumer camera to catch it. If you pull it off, you'll have footage no network can fake. The sky is acting strange, the ground is listening, and 3i Atlas is about to pass the microphone. Keep watching. The next signal is already on its way. Here's what the sky is actually doing. In plain language, you can repeat to anyone who asks. A nova isn't a star exploding to death. It's a star dumping a hidden fuel tank all at once. Picture two stars locked in a tight dance. One of them is a dense white dwarf, think Earth-sized, some mass gravity like an iron fist. The other star puffs off gas. The dwarf steals that gas and packs it on its surface until the layer hits a flash point. Then, woomph, a nuclear skin burst. Not a final supernova, but a surface detonation bright enough to outshine everything nearby for days. That's V1935 Centauri. That's why gamma rays and hard X-rays flagged. Particles got whipped to insane speeds and slammed through magnetic fields like bullets through glass. The other one, V7994 Sagittarius, is the same story at a lower volume, still bright, still fast, just under the edge of naked eye vision unless your sky is perfect. Those blasts don't aim at us. But space isn't empty. Their shock waves ride the same sea our sun churns with solar wind. Think of the heliosphere as a gigantic river. Constant flow, eddies, gusts, calms. Now add a coronal mass ejection. Not gentle wind, but a moving wall of charged plasma with its own magnetic skeleton. Most days, that wall blows past comets like a weather front. But 3i Atlas isn't acting like most comets, and it isn't sitting in the outer dark anymore. It's inside Mars's neighborhood, where the river runs thicker. Here's the part most people skip. Dust and gas around a hot object don't just float. Sunlight ionizes gas. Particles become charged. Those charges stick to dust. Now the dust listens to magnetic fields. When a CME arrives, it doesn't just push its magnetic field, rewires the coma. Tails split, jets flip. The glow shifts, not because physics broke, but because the invisible rails got switched. That's how professionals can measure an anti-sun tail at the same time amateurs see a brief sunward spike. The big arrays isolate faint, long-lived streamers. The backyard stacks catch short, bright, forward jets riding fresh field lines. Two truths, same sky, different time slices. Back on Earth, the ground breathes with space weather. When a high-speed stream from a coronal hole slams into the magnetosphere, it compresses like a spring. When that stream passes and solar wind density drops hard, the spring relaxes. That flex changes electrical currents in the crust and ionosphere. Most days, it's noise. Some days, a fault that was already loaded takes the hint. Venezuela's twin quakes look like that. A shallow zipper pop, then a deeper tooth giving way, followed by a strong aftershock that says, "I'm not finished deciding yet." It's not a weapon, it's timing. Bad timing, but still timing. Now, line up the dates that matter. November 3rd, 3-eye Atlas skims within to 0.2 AU of Mars. That's close enough that small cameras on orbiters and rovers can catch scattered light or changes in the coma, even if they're not pointed specifically for a glamour shot. November 21st, Superior Conjunction. Atlas hides behind the Sun from Earth's view. The same-day comet, Swan, slides to 0.25 AU from us. Two different objects under the same floodlight. If one behaves comet normal and the other doesn't, you feel the difference in your gut. November 29th, perihelion fastest, hottest, where fragile skins either blow off or armor up. That's when stubborn mysteries usually pick a side. Let's talk brightness, because numbers don't scare us. After July's solar hits, Atlas jumped from magnitude to 16 to 12, about 20 times brighter. It didn't fall back to the old line. It held. That plateau is the weird part. Something about its surface or coma got reconfigured and stayed that way. If this fresh CME is as aligned as the models suggest, we should watch for a second step up. A gentler jump, maybe half as strong, inside a few days of impact. You don't need an observatory to test this. Use a fixed tripod, a 50mm or 85mm lens, and stack multiple 10-15 second exposures across 3 nights. Compare the integrated brightness against nearby catalog stars. If the stacked brightness nudges up while those reference stars stay flat, you just measure the change yourself. There's another tell most people miss: polarization. When light scatters off charged dust, the electric field can align. If Atlas's coma is as plasma-heavy as it looks, a CME can swing that alignment. Amateur polarizers won't give you numbers, but they'll give you a feel. Rotate the filter. If contrast on the coma changes more one night than the next, while nearby stars don't, you're watching field geometry with your own hands. Now, the elephant in the dome. Why are some images showing that forward jet at all? Think of Atlas as an onion of activity zones. The easy ices vaporize first and feed a soft, wide anti-sun tail. But if there are tighter vents near the subsolar point, the side facing the sun, and those vents couple to a twisted magnetic field, you can get a collimated microjet that briefly points sunward, not because the comet is thrusting forward, but because charged dust is streaming along a field line that currently loops around and into the solar-facing side. The amateurs catch the flash because they're stacking seconds. The pros see the halo because they're mapping hours. Why should you care? Because a field-driven coma is easier to predict than a random dust cloud. It means the real story might come in pulses tied to solar rotation, not just distance from the Sunday. If that's true, the next clear bead could land right as Atlas brushes Mars, and again just before perihelion. Beads, not blur. Rhythm, not noise. Meanwhile, the sun isn't calming down. a sunspot count in the 160 seconds, solar flux over 180, none of that screams catastrophe, but it sets the stage. It means more chances for CMEs, more chances for field flips, more chances for Atlas to show us what it really is when the rails switch underneath it. You're going to hear a lot of theories. Metal core, hollow shell, ice boulder with a temper. Here's the promise I'll make. We'll ride the data, but we won't ignore the pattern. 2 novae, 2 quakes, 1 CME. One object that refuses to behave. You don't need to force a grand conspiracy to recognize a month where every dial is turned clockwise. In a moment, we'll start the Mars countdown. What instruments could accidentally catch Atlas, what angles matter, and how a tiny timing offset can turn a no signal into a one-frame miracle. We'll also show you the simple neighborhood test to prove the sunward spike is real using nothing but a DSLR, a star chart, and patience. And then we'll widen our circle to the 21st why Swan is the control experiment you didn't know you needed, and what it means if Atlas glows when Swan doesn't. Stay with me. The next 3 nights decide whether Atlas is just noisy or patterned. The days after the coronal mass ejection hit were supposed to be quiet, but space doesn't do quiet. It holds its breath before it speaks. 3i Atlas didn't just brighten, it shimmered. Faint variations in its light curve began appearing every few hours, as if something inside it was pulsing. Some astronomers brushed it off as rotational wobble. Others swore the pattern was too rhythmic, too precise. On October 27th, early reports came in from observatories in Chile and Hawaii. The coma surrounding Atlas had grown again wider, denser, and strangely symmetrical. The anti-sunward tail now stretched over 120,000 kilometers, but in long exposure composites, it bent almost coiling before straightening again. That curve shouldn't exist, not naturally. At the same time, the gamma-ray readings from the 2 novas were still trickling into NASA's Space Weather Prediction Center. The timing lined up eerily close. Both stellar explosions occurred within hours of the CME blast that swept through Atlas's trajectory. No direct connection, the experts said. Just coincidence. But you and I have seen too many coincidences this month to call them random. Let's zoom in. Earth's magnetosphere had just recovered from a minor geomagnetic storm when a sudden drop in solar wind density, the same vacuum effect that preceded Venezuela's twin quakes, reappeared. Seismographs across South America twitched. The Andes hummed faintly. Nothing catastrophic, but measurable. Subtle ripples through the crust, like the planet itself, was reacting to something unseen, some external field fluctuation too vast to explain. And then came the next twist. Spectral analysis of Atlas's coma revealed faint emission lines, not the usual carbon or oxygen bands seen in typical comets. These were shifted, warped in a way that didn't match any known element ratios. The first assumption was instrumental error. Then, multiple telescopes confirmed it. Whatever Atlas is made of, it's not fully natural. That's when theories turned dark. Some researchers began whispering about electromagnetic feedback, the idea that Atlas could be acting like a moving plasma antenna, resonating with solar currents and transmitting something. When you think of it that way, the symmetry in its coma isn't just pretty, it's structural, deliberate. But here's where it gets really strange. As Atlas approached Mars, the planet's magnetic field sensors picked up a faint induction pattern. Weak, yes, but rhythmic. Almost identical in pulse rate to the oscillations detected in Atlas's light curve. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the red planet just answered back. The deeper we go, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just astronomy, it's interaction. Something about Atlas, the novas, and the solar surge are playing together like instruments in the same orchestra. November 3rd is approaching fast. The Mars flyby and scientists around the world are watching every pixel. Because if the pulse gets stronger, if Mars's sensors light up again, we might be witnessing the first conversation between the Sun, a planet, and an object not born in our solar system. And that's not just weird, that's historic. Stay with me. The next part will take us right into the Mars encounter, the moment where we either prove this object is natural or realize it was never meant to be found. As the calendar flipped into November, something shifted not just in data, but in the way people spoke about it. The tone on astronomy forums grew tense. The live streams tracking Atlas stopped joking about space rocks. Everyone could see it now. The object wasn't behaving like a comet, and it wasn't moving like one either. NASA's tracking models started to drift literally. The predicted coordinates for Atlas began missing by small margins at first, a few thousand kilometers here and there, then tens of thousands. The trajectory didn't curve according to gravity alone. It was adjusting ever so slightly as if it were responding to something. On the night of November 2nd, telescopes across South America caught the first clear time-lapse of Atlas crossing behind Mars. For the first 12 minutes, everything looked normal, just a bright point sliding past the planet's glare. Then came the flare. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't solar glare. It was internal. A sudden luminous pulse rippled through the object's coma, like light leaking through cracks in stone. A reddish halo followed, faint at first, then spreading outward, forming a perfect ellipse around the object. The pulse repeated every 3.4 seconds. And then it stopped. Just stopped. For 12 full minutes after the pulse, Mars's ionosphere spiked with electrical disturbance far stronger than what the planet's weak magnetic field could produce on its own. Instruments on orbiters began glitching, telemetry dropped in short bursts, then returned scrambled. The ESA's Mars Express recorded a low-frequency hum, barely audible, sitting in the 5 Hz range. No human would hear it. But if you speed it up 400 times, it sounds like a signal pulsed, repeating, structured. By dawn, the footage hit the internet. Amateurs labeled it the heartbeat of Atlas. NASA refused to comment. The European Space Agency denied any anomalous signal, but quietly removed the 213 UTC segment from their public stream. And that's when things truly broke loose. Astrophysicist Max Raymond, the same one who spoke about nova-triggered climate resonance, published a brief note on his private site. he wrote, is greater than if what we're seeing from Mars is real, it implies Atlas's outer shell isn't reflecting sunlight, it's channeling it. Some kind of layered crystalline or metallic lattice structure. That would explain the phase shift in the spectral readings. That single post crashed his website in under an hour. Meanwhile, down on Earth, something else started happening. The Schumann resonance Earth's background electromagnetic hum spiked again. A clean, narrow rise at exactly the same frequency the Mars orbiters had picked up. 5 hertzes. Not random, not natural. The timing was too tight. 2 novas erupting. A double quake. A CME impact. And now, an interstellar object talking back in frequency bands tied to planetary resonance. 3i Atlas was no longer just an astronomical curiosity, it was an unknown, active participant in the solar system. The night after the flare, the object dimmed drastically. For the first time since July, its brightness dropped by nearly a full magnitude in less than 24 hours. But the shape of its coma didn't shrink, it expanded. A black void opened at the center of the bright cloud, like a tunnel with no reflection. Some said it looked like the eye of a storm, others said it looked alive. And through that hollow center, faint lights could be seen moving, not random flickers, not camera noise tiny, ordered points that seemed to shift information before vanishing again. When NASA released its sanitized report the following day, they called it a plasma inversion effect. But plasma doesn't move in patterns, and it doesn't blink in Morse-like rhythm. By November 4th, a dozen independent astronomers confirmed it. The lights were real. The pattern repeated every 19 minutes, sometimes lasting 30 seconds, sometimes less, but always the same rhythm. It wasn't constant, it was waiting. And on the morning of November 5th, the waiting ended. Atlas began accelerating. Only slightly but measurably. Its velocity increased by 0.003 AU per day, tiny by human standards, impossible by natural ones. No outgassing, no visible jets, no debris, just a steady, deliberate push toward the Sunday. Astronomers had no model for it. The best theories failed. The numbers didn't fit any natural trajectory adjustment. And that's when the whispers started. What if Atlas wasn't reacting to the sun's energy? What if it was feeding on it? Whatever it was doing, it was changing the way space itself behaved around it. Solar wind streams began bending slightly toward the object. Charged particles in its path deflected abnormally, as though a hidden magnetic field surrounded it. For the first time in history, an interstellar visitor wasn't just passing through, it was altering the environment around it. The closer it got to the sun, the more unstable it became. Brightness surges, light curve distortions, plasma jets forming in perfect geometries, and every pattern traced back to that same impossible pulse. 3.4 seconds on, 3.4 seconds off. That was no rotation. That was a heartbeat. And if you were to overlay that heartbeat on Earth's electromagnetic record for November 5th, you'd see the same rhythm echoed faintly in the background noise of our planet's field. It's as if Earth was responding, or worse, listening. The world doesn't know it yet, but something just woke up inside our solar system. And whatever it is, it's heading straight into the Sunday. By November 7th, the sky had gone silent again, too silent. The light curve of 3I Atlas flattened out completely. No flickers, no rotations, no measurable spin. Just a constant, unnatural glow that refused to fade even as it neared the sun's blazing threshold. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory locked its sensors onto it, expecting a standard breakup sequence: gas sublimating, ice vaporizing, dust scattering into a luminous trail. That's how comets die near perihelion. But Atlas didn't die. It stabilized. Its coma, once chaotic and storm-like, collapsed inward, forming a compact metallic sheen around the nucleus. For the first time, the telescope could make out its shape clearly. It wasn't spherical. It wasn't even irregular like most icy bodies. It was long, sharp-edged like a shard. 50 kilometers long, 5 wide. A slab of stone and metal scarred by time, smooth in places where nothing should ever be smooth. And beneath the glare of the sun, it shimmered faintly blue reflecting light, not back into space, but across it. Spectroscopy didn't show rock or ice anymore. It showed traces of crystalline lattice structures similar to nickel-iron alloys, but with energy absorption peaks that didn't belong to any known element. It was as if Atlas had transformed under the solar wind, like it had been waiting for this proximity. At 5:11 UTC on November 9th, something impossible happened. The comet, or whatever it was, began emitting a stream of particles directly against the solar wind. Imagine standing in a hurricane and exhaling so forcefully that you carve out a tunnel in the storm. That's what it did. For 39 seconds, a beam of charged plasma extended outward from its core-thin, white, unnervingly precise, like a blade of light. That beam cut straight through the solar wind's magnetic flow and maintained coherence all the way to 0.05 AU. Instruments on Parker's solar probe registered the pulse as a massive spike in radio emissions, structured, layered, mathematical. And here's what chilled the scientific world. When those radio emissions were translated into spectrograms, the patterns looked eerily familiar, not random, not noise. They matched the electromagnetic patterns of neural activity. The universe's largest radio telescope, FAST in China, tuned in and confirmed it. A rhythmic modulation at 3.4 Hz, the same heartbeat signal from before embedded inside the plasma pulse. It was as if Atlas had gone from receiving energy to sending information. Then, 48 hours later, the sun answered. At 3:22 UTC, a coronal loop erupted directly from the solar surface facing Atlas. Not a random flare, a perfect arc. It rose, curved, and folded back upon itself, creating a symmetrical ring like a luminous halo over the heliosphere. NASA's solar imagery caught it in high resolution. It wasn't chaotic plasma motion, it was deliberate. The flare's magnetic footprint traced an identical 3.4 Hz oscillation pattern, like the Sun was mirroring the rhythm of Atlas's pulse. For a moment, the instruments glitched across every observatory. Radio silence followed for exactly 3 minutes. And when the data feeds came back, the first thing analysts noticed was that every planetary magnetometer, Earth, Mars, even Venus, showed a synchronized wave echo, the same pulse, the same heartbeat. Atlas hadn't just interacted with the Sunday. It had synchronized with it. And that synchronization rippled outward through the heliosphere, across the interplanetary magnetic field, and down to the smallest sensors buried deep inside Earth's crust. Seismographs picked up faint, harmonic vibrations at impossible uniform intervals. The Schumann resonance rose by a measurable 0.2 Hz. Not chaos order, perfect order. That's when everything changed. On November 11th, as Atlas reached its exact perihelion point, observers across the world watched live as its silhouette passed in front of the Sunday. For a brief moment, no more than 5 seconds, the entire surface of the Sun behind it dimmed. It was as if something between us and the star absorbed more than light. It absorbed information. Then, in one final blinding flash, the object disappeared. No explosion, no debris, no vapor trail, just gone. The Solar Dynamics Observatory registered a burst of gamma radiation lasting 0.8 seconds, too short for a supernova, too strong for a solar flare. But embedded in that burst was data, not random cosmic background noise, a repeating binary sequence. When decoded, it didn't form language. It formed an image, a simple spiraling pattern identical to the mathematical geometry seen in the early galaxies captured by the James Webb Telescope. The same spiral hidden in the structure of the universe itself. Atlas wasn't destroyed. It was activated. And for the first time in human history, the Sun wasn't just a star. It was transmitting something back. Every radio dish on Earth caught the same faint echo. Hours later, a whisper on the cosmic wind that repeated just once before fading forever. 3.4. Scientists will debate it for decades, but those who heard the faint pulse in the static, who watched the Sun dim for 5 impossible seconds, they know the truth. The unimaginable wasn't a discovery, it was a message. And the universe finally replied. The world changed after that moment, quietly, almost reverently, as if humanity knew on some subconscious level that something irreversible had happened. For days, no one dared make an official statement. NASA went dark. ESA's feeds went under technical maintenance. JAXA scrubbed their heliophysics dashboard. Even independent astronomers found their live data feeds throttled, sometimes mysteriously overwritten with blank calibration files. It was as if the universe had spoken, and someone wanted to mute the echo. But the echo didn't stop. 3 days after the flash, strange fluctuations began rippling through the magnetosphere. Northern lights appeared where they shouldn't, arcing over Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and even the equator. Soft red and blue curtains of plasma shimmered across night skies that had never seen auroras before. People recorded it with their phones, thinking it was a glitch, a reflection, a trick of the clouds. But scientists confirmed it. The Earth's upper atmosphere was charged more than ever before. And threaded through those auroras was that same faint pulse, 3.4 hertzes, beating like a cosmic metronome inside the planet's own electromagnetic field. Atlas was gone, but it had left something behind. Satellites began picking up low-frequency radio noise, not bursts, not cosmic static, but rhythmic waves that carried embedded modulation. When decoded, it wasn't random. It was patterned, recursive, almost organic. The first who noticed was a small amateur radio group in Finland. They captured the pulse, ran it through audio modulation software, and claimed to hear what sounded like breathing. Not mechanical, not artificial. Something between the deep exhale and the wind over mountains. Then, on November 18th, the James Webb Space Telescope, which had gone offline for recalibration after the flare, came back online automatically, except it wasn't pointing where it had been left. The telescope had reoriented itself precisely toward the Sunday, which should have been impossible. It's not programmed to observe the sun directly. Its sensors would fry instantly. But instead of burning out, the mirrors adjusted in increments, realigning the shields in a way that somehow allowed partial filtering. It was like the telescope knew what it was doing. When engineers accessed the raw telemetry feed, what they saw made no sense. Webb had begun recording deep infrared data from the solar corona impossible data. The readings showed geometric distortions rippling across the corona's plasma loops, faint, organized patterns forming and dissolving like waves across a neural grid. The sun was no longer random fire. It was structured. A research team at MIT quietly analyzed the data and concluded that the distortions matched the same golden spiral ratios Webb had discovered in distant galaxies, the same pattern Atlas had transmitted before it vanished. It wasn't coincidence. It was continuity. Atlas hadn't been destroyed at perihelion. It had merged. Theories flooded in, each more unhinged than the last. Some said Atlas was an ancient interstellar vessel, a seed of intelligence traveling between stars, awakening suns as it passed. Others whispered that it wasn't a ship at all, but a form of life, plasma-based, conscious only when charged by starlight. A few went darker. That Atlas was a construct, designed to awaken stars one by one to switch them on, like transmitters in a vast cosmic network. Because for the first time ever, scientists noticed something unprecedented. Other stars began flickering in the same 3.4 hertzes pattern. Alpha Centauri, Proxima, Tau Ceti, each one faint but detectable, pulsing in rhythm. The universe wasn't silent anymore. It was synchronized. By December, the pattern had reached Earth in ways no one could ignore. Power grids hummed faintly out of sync. Birds migrated erratically. Whales began beaching in perfect geometric spirals along coastlines, their bodies aligning to magnetic flow lines that hadn't existed before. It was as if the planet itself was tuning, and in that background hum, Buried deep in the data streams, radio engineers at Arecibo's restored array found something extraordinary. The pulse, the heartbeat, was modulated now. It wasn't just repeating numbers. It was forming sequences. When converted into images, they resembled constellations. Not ours, new ones. Patterns of stars we don't recognize yet, each one mapped perfectly to the newly synchronized stellar beacons now pulsing across the galaxy. The implication was terrifying. This wasn't random. It was a network, a living lattice stretching across light-year stars, communicating in frequency, using light and plasma as language. And at the heart of it all our Sunday, now flickering in rhythm, now away. Somewhere in deep space, maybe hundreds of trillions of miles away, something had pressed connect, and Earth had just joined the call. It started quietly, not with an explosion or a disaster, but with a feeling. By December 21st, people around the world began reporting the same thing, a low, almost musical vibration in the air. It wasn't a sound you could record. It wasn't coming from speakers or machines. It was a resonance you could feel in your bones, a pressure deep behind the ears that throbbed in rhythm with the heartbeat of the Sunday. 3.4 hertz. It made animals restless. It made compasses drift. But it also made people dream. Not the normal flickering dreams of the subconscious, but lucid ones, shared ones. Across continents, thousands of people began describing the same vision. A colossal structure floating in the dark, shaped like a broken ring, glowing faint gold against a backdrop of blue-black space. Inside the ring, a storm of light. Some called it the Atlas Gate. Others said it looked like an eye. When EEGs were run on subjects during those episodes, the readings were identical synchronized brainwave bursts matching the solar frequency. 3.4 hertzes again, the number that refused to go away. Scientists panicked in silence. They tried to dismiss it as pareidolia, collective hysteria, EM interference. But then, satellites started picking it up too. The global positioning system, the quiet web that orbits our world, began showing fractional shifts, tiny but deliberate, aligning with the same frequency bands. Every 3.4 seconds, the satellite clocks registered a microsecond drift, synchronized across all orbital layers, low Earth, geostationary, even lunar relay probes. The network wasn't being disrupted. It was being retuned. On December 29th, the James Webb Telescope sent its final transmission before its systems inexplicably shut down again. The engineers thought it was an error log, a data dump before automatic hibernation. But when decoded, it wasn't a log. It was a picture, a deep infrared panorama showing the entire heliosphere, the bubble of space surrounding our solar system, glowing faintly in the shape of a perfect spiral. And at its center, the sun burned with a distinct geometric outline, a hexagon. The same six-sided symmetry that had been seen in the flower formation from Webb's early galaxy images. The same one Atlas transmitted before it vanished. It wasn't just the sun communicating. It was reshaping space itself, radio telescopes across the world suddenly began receiving overlapping signals from multiple star-synchronized transmissions that, when processed together, formed a kind of holographic map. Not random, not noise, a structured topography of energy, as if showing where gravity itself had been rewritten. The realization hit slowly, then all at once. Atlas hadn't simply synchronized stars, it had connected them. The network was live. Astronomers called it the lattice. Philosophers called it the awakening. And the rest of the world called it something simpler and far older, the return. Because as the new year began, something impossible appeared in the sky. On January 1st, 2026, just before sunrise, every telescope, satellite, and pair of human eyes witnessed it, a massive, faintly luminous object appearing just beyond the moon's orbit. It was dark, metallic, and rotating slowly, but not tumbling, not random, controlled. Its structure matched Atlas's last observed geometry, but vastly larger. Hundreds of kilometers across, composed of interlocking plates glowing with soft pulsating light. And from its edges, tendrils of energy extended outward, shimmering like auroras, brushing the moon's shadow, reaching toward Earth. For 4 hours, it hovered there, silent, distant, alive. Then it turned, ever so slightly, toward the Sunday. And when it did, the pulse stopped. All frequencies flatlined, the heartbeat of the sun gone. No more 3.4 hertzes, no more resonance, just silence. The stars stopped flickering, the auroras vanished. The world held its breath. Then, as the first light of dawn touched the earth, a single narrow beam of gold light descended from the object, not random, not scattered, focused precisely on one point on the planet, the Antarctic ice sheet. It burned for exactly 3.4 seconds. Satellites watching from orbit confirmed it didn't melt ice or destroy anything. It just imprinted. And beneath the ice, in the following hours, seismographs detected something ancient, awakening, something metallic, something structured, a perfect hexagonal formation buried 5 kilometers below the surface. No one could explain how it got there. But the coordinates matched the exact position of a magnetic anomaly discovered decades ago, one scientist had ignored for years. Now it pulsed faintly, 3.4 hertzes. The object beyond the moon began to fade, dissolving back into the blackness of space like smoke into wind. Its job was done. Whatever Atlas was, it had never been a comet. It was a key. And somewhere under Antarctica, the lock had just turned. The following weeks felt unreal. The kind of stillness that doesn't soothe it warms. For the first time in recorded history, Earth's magnetic field began to hum, not fluctuate, not spike. It sang. A deep rolling resonance that spread through oceans and continents alike, imperceptible to most, yet measurable by everything. Seismographs, radio towers, even pacemakers. And the strange part? It wasn't chaotic. Every pattern, every oscillation, Every tiny vibration lined up perfectly with the same timing that had once belonged to Atlas. 3.4 seconds between each pulse. It became a universal clock, an invisible metronome that ticked beneath the surface of reality. The Antarctic signal, the one buried beneath 5 kilometers of ice, began growing stronger. Subglacial radar showed the structure wasn't natural. It was geometric, six-sided, vast and symmetrical. At first, researchers thought it was a mineral formation or an ancient meteorite. But when they sent drones to investigate, the drones' electronics went dead the instant they reached the perimeter. Every signal bounced back as static, except one. A low-frequency ping, steady, deliberate, rhythmic, like sonar, like something listening back. The world governments went silent, but the leaks couldn't be contained. Within days, footage appeared online, thermal satellite scans showing a heat signature growing beneath the ice, circular information slowly expanding outward like a living heartbeat. It wasn't melting the ice. It was consuming data. Scientists noticed it first through anomaly logs, seismic readings, weather telemetry, and even encrypted files from Antarctic research stations began to vanish from cloud backups, not deleted, absorbed. The files didn't corrupt. They transformed. When technicians opened them, they didn't find text or numbers. They found fractals, spirals, golden ratios, repeating geometric signatures identical to those captured from Webb's earliest impossible galaxies. Someone or something was rewriting data into design, and all of it pointed to one conclusion no one wanted to say out loud. The signal wasn't passive. It was constructive. As January rolled into February, new phenomena began sweeping across the world. Clouds formed in spirals above the pole. Magnetic storms became synchronized, no longer random flashes, but rotating, pulsing disks that moved with eerie precision. GPS satellites started broadcasting ghost coordinates, alternate locations that didn't exist on any map, places floating in the middle of the ocean or deep underground. When researchers plotted them, the points formed a single global pattern, a spiral spanning the entire planet centered exactly on Antarctica. The planet wasn't being attacked, it was being calibrated. Astronomers noticed the night sky itself had subtly shifted constellations a fraction of a degree off their positions, as if space itself had bent ever so slightly. Stars that had once flickered irregularly were now synchronized in perfect timing with the heartbeat. It wasn't just the sun that was awake. It was the network. And then came the dream. Millions of people began reporting identical imagery, not just of the ring-shaped structure from before, but of something else, a city, impossible in scale, floating in the dark between stars, glowing with spirals of gold and blue light. Its towers stretched like veins into the void. Its horizon curved not around a planet, but around an artificial sun at its center, pulsing, alive, aware. When the visions were over, those who experienced them woke up with a metallic taste in their mouths, and faint traces of static electricity on their skin. Hospitals reported an increase in cases of temporary electromagnetic discharge. Humans briefly becoming conductors of energy. Whatever had been buried beneath the Antarctic ice was reaching out. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, all contact with McMurdo Station was lost. An automated weather satellite captured the last image before blackout, a vast hexagonal shadow spreading across the ice, miles wide, glowing faintly gold beneath the snowstorm. Within hours, global magnetometers spiked in unison, and then the auroras returned. But this time, they didn't belong to the poles. They stretched across the equator, wrapping the planet in a soft golden halo visible even in daylight. Birds stopped mid-flight. Power grids failed. The world stood under a shimmering dome of light that pulsed in rhythm with the same relentless heartbeat. 3.4 hertzes. And then a transmission. Short, crackling. Half of it static, half of it structured noise. But when decoded and visualized, it wasn't sound at all. It was language, a spiraling pattern of symbols, matching no known human script, yet arranged with mathematical precision. AI models across the world try to translate it. The result, after millions of iterations, came down to 3 words: is greater than you are seen. Then the transmission ended, and everything went dark. For the first time in history, the entire world was awake at the same hour. The pulse had unified time itself, 3.4 seconds between every tremor of reality. And beneath the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, the sound was no longer distant. It was rising. Every seismograph on Earth lit up at once, not in random chaos, but in perfect synchronized rhythm, as though the planet itself had begun to breathe. Governments panicked. Every major power sent research vessels south, breaking through the collapsing ice shelves as satellite feeds flickered and died one by one. The aurora overhead had turned gold, now not the soft greens and reds of natural plasma, but metallic gold shimmering with structured bands of light that rotated like gears in the heavens. And beneath that sky, the first expedition team reached the edge of the anomaly. They expected ice. They found glass. Miles of transparent honeycomb-like material forming a dome smooth, warm to the touch, humming faintly with electrical life. Beneath it, the buried hexagonal structure was no longer buried at all. The ice had receded in geometric patterns, melting in spirals, exposing a labyrinth of corridors glowing with white-blue energy veins. It wasn't just a structure, it was alive. Drones sent inside broadcasted what no one could explain: walls covered in fractal engravings that shimmered and moved like liquid when light touched them. Every surface pulsed in sync with the same frequency as the Sunday. 3.4 hertz, the universal constant. When the team descended deeper, their comms began to distort, not with static, but with whispers, fragments of words in every human language, overlaid with tones that resembled heartbeat and breath. Someone or something was using sound to speak through resonance. At the heart of the chamber, they found a massive core, a sphere suspended in midair, rotating slowly, emitting golden plasma ribbons that bent gravity around it. When they pointed instruments at it, every reading broke. Temperatures spiked, then dropped below zero simultaneously. Gravity reversed for milliseconds. Time signatures in their recording split, showing multiple parallel timelines playing at once. Then, for a brief moment, the sphere opened. A blinding pulse of golden light flooded the chamber, freezing the team in place. Their suits registered no damage, but neural monitors showed something extraordinary. All of their brain waves synchronized instantly into identical rhythm. The same rhythm as the pulse. And then they saw, not through eyes, but through consciousness. They saw the universe unfold like a map of living geometry galaxies connected by filaments of light, stars pulsing in harmony, energy flowing through cosmic arteries that spanned eternity. And at the center of it all, a colossal shape, a ring. The same structure from their dreams, but now awake, rotating across the void, tethered to suns like neurons in a cosmic brain. Each rotation sent waves of golden plasma through the lattice of galaxies, igniting newborn stars, shaping time itself. The voice came next. Not heard, but felt. It resonated through their bones, through their atoms, through the space between their atoms. It's greater than you are not alone. The expedition cameras melted from radiation before the message finished. But the transmission reached orbit before the feed cut out, and every satellite in Earth's network caught the same frame of data. The sphere collapsing into itself, the dome shattering into golden mist, and beneath it, a staircase descending into blackness, leading deeper into the planet. Then, silence. Moments later, the auroras vanished. The pulse stopped. For the first time in months, the world fell quiet, but only for 7 minutes. Then, one by one, observatories across the globe began detecting it not from space, but from within Earth. A signal, perfect, repeating, and stronger than anything ever recorded. When triangulated, it formed a 3D map of Earth's inner layers, except the core wasn't solid iron anymore. It was hollow, and in the center, clear as day, was a new energy source spinning alive, geometric. The frequency? 3.4 hertzes. The realization came all at once. Atlas had never come from interstellar space. It had come from us, from beneath, from the very heart of the planet. Humanity had spent centuries looking outward, searching for life beyond the stars, never realizing the signal we were chasing had been calling from below the surface all along. Atlas wasn't an object. It was an awakening, the final stage of a cycle older than recorded time. And now, the Earth itself was joining the network. The stars pulsed again, one by one, in unison, across the black sea of space. The sun flared gold. The ground beneath Antarctica split open, and from it something began to rise. A shape so massive, so ancient, that for a moment night returned at midday. Metallic tendrils spiraled into the sky, unfolding like petals of a flower made of light. It didn't resemble a ship. It resembled a seed. And when the last petal bloomed, the signal returned louder, clearer, undeniable. Is greater than the cycle completes. The watchers awaken. Every star in the sky flickered once. Every ocean vibrated. And in that instant, humanity realized the truth. The unimaginable wasn't something Webb had detected. It was something we had become. The stars weren't watching us. They were waiting for us to remember. The light faded slowly, as though the universe itself was exhaling. No explosions, no destruction, just stillness. The kind of silence that feels aware. Across the world, the skies dimmed to a copper hue, soft, unfamiliar, endless. In that quiet, every machine, every satellite, every instrument on Earth fell into the same pulse once more. Not violent, not alien, steady, gentle, alive. And when scientists looked back toward space, they saw that the stars had rearranged again. Not by movement, but by design. Constellations once scattered now traced perfect spirals across the heavens, faint golden threads connecting them. Like the stitches of a cosmic web drawn by something vast and patient. The James Webb Telescope, silent since the Antarctica event, powered back on by itself. Its mirrors rotated, uncommanded, reorienting not toward the edge of the universe but directly toward Earth. And from deep within its systems, a message appeared. 3 words. Is greater than connection complete. The feed went black. No one knew what to make of it. Some said it was an AI malfunction. Others whispered that humanity had triggered a communication protocol far older than civilization itself. But one thing was clear. The pulse had stopped because the signal had finally found its answer. And whatever had been buried beneath the ice was no longer beneath it. Weeks later, infrared satellites caught faint light emissions rising from the Antarctic interior, patterns of spiraling energy visible from orbit, stretching outward like veins of light threading through the planet's crust. They were moving, slowly, patiently, as if the Earth itself was integrating something, rewriting its own code. And then, without warning, the northern lights returned. But this time, they weren't green. They shimmered in deep gold, weaving across the sky in silent, synchronized waves. People around the world stopped what they were doing to watch. The auroras formed arcs that mirrored the same spirals Webb had captured among ancient galaxies. The same geometry found in the golden flowers of deep space. The same patterns hidden in DNA. Everything from atoms to stars was built from the same design. And in that moment, the realization hit like a quiet storm. The universe wasn't expanding into emptiness. It was awakening. Maybe that was the truth. Atlas had carried all along not a warning, not a weapon, but an invitation. A reminder that the boundaries between flesh, planet, and star were never real to begin with. That every pulse, every flare, every dream was one note in a song older than time. The James Webb Telescope had not just seen the unimaginable, it had spoken to it. And somewhere, beneath the frozen continent that had become the planet's heart, something vast and unseen whispered back through the hum of the magnetic field, not in English, not in light, but in pure resonance. A heartbeat, ours and something else's, beating together. Now the question isn't what we found in the dark, it's what's been waiting there for us to finally hear it. If you felt it too, that pulse, that chill, that question echoing through your chest, then don't look away, because this is only the beginning. The stars have just started to speak, and the next transmission is already on its way. Subscribe, because when the next signal arrives, you'll want to be here when the universe answers back.